It's almost time for your fantasy draft, and you have the number one pick. Who are you going to take? Hey, what's going on, everybody? Jake, Fantasy Headliners. How you doing today? Welcome back. As you can see, if you've been watching here in the past, got a new logo on the screen, a little bit different of a background, kind of. Yeah, I've joined the RotoBaller team. If you guys haven't checked out RotoBaller, you need to. I got a link down in the description. If you have any fantasy needs, any fantasy questions, RotoBaller is the place to go. All right, so in this episode, we're going to be talking about the number one pick. I mean, it's probably one of the hardest picks because you can choose anybody you want to choose from, right? You can choose running backs. You can choose a receiver. I don't care. If you want to choose your favorite player, you have the opportunity to do so, and nobody can do anything about it. That's part of the cool thing about having the number one pick. But the hard part about it is making that decision if there's more than one guy. So in this episode, I got 5 guys. I'm pretty sure you already know who they are. But we're gonna talk about all of them. We're gonna give you all 5 options, and at the end of it, I'm gonna tell you who I would take if I had the number one pick. So like usual, not gonna waste your time. Let's get into the list. All right, let's talk about the first guy on my list, and it's going to be Todd Gurley. He's the consensus number one overall pick right now. He's my number one rated running back, and he is in serious consideration for the number one pick in almost every fantasy draft. There's other episodes out here, other shows I'm sure you guys watch, and there's some people that are going to tell you, hey, he was the number one running back last year. Nobody ever repeats it for a second year. Yeah, well, every year something happens in sports that's not supposed to happen, right? I'm pretty sure we just watched March Madness, and a 16 seed's not supposed to beat a number one seed, but it happens. You never know. Don't just count it out because somebody told you that it's never going to happen again. You never know what's going to happen. And Todd Gurley is no different. I mean, look at the season he had last year. His season last year was ridiculous, right? I mean, the guy just put up huge numbers all season long, really helped a lot of people out in the fantasy playoffs, had just under 2,100 total yards from scrimmage. Are you kidding me? 2,100 yards last year, and had 87 targets out of the backfield. That's pretty awesome. I mean, he did have 6 receiving touchdowns, which is a little high. That number may be a little inflated. And even if it does come down a little bit, he's in no danger of losing this number one spot. He had less than 300 carries last year, and for the amount of yardage that he put up, you would think that he would have had more volume. Now, he was just under 300. It's not like he had 200 carries or something like that, but he did it with a little bit less. I mean, I think Todd Gurley showed us last year that he doesn't have to have a ridiculous work volume like some of the other running backs to get these numbers. He's in a perfect offense, right? I mean, Sean McVay is building something with the Rams that's special. It's kind of hard to believe since Jared Goff is the quarterback, but hey, Jared Goff looked great last year at times. They got weapons all over the field. Just brought in Brandon Cooks. Robert Woods had an emergence last year. Cooper Kupp looks like somebody who's going to get a lot of red zone work and is a real good possession receiver across the middle of the field. They're scary. I mean, it's a scary offense, and their defense got crazy good in the offseason. And everybody's saying, well, why does the defense matter? Well, this is why it matters. Okay, this defense is close to elite, if not already elite, up there with the Jacksonvilles and the Minnesota Vikings and the Eagles, which are pretty stout. I mean, there's lots of good defenses this year, and they're right up there with them. And if the defenses are playing well, opposing teams aren't scoring very many points. And if the Rams are able to continue to score points like they did last year, they're going to be running the ball in the second half a lot. And what happens if they run the ball a lot? Todd Gurley's numbers just continue to climb. That's what's going to happen. He's got nobody there to really challenge for his touches. And right now, he's my number one rated running back. But should you take him number one? Let's talk about everybody else first. All right, let's talk about Ezekiel Elliott here next on the list. Another guy who's in contention for the number one overall pick. Zeke gets volume, right? I mean, he's always doing the feed me thing, whatever. But it's true, and they do, and they're going to continue to do it again this year. They're going to feed Zeke. Right now, he's averaging 23 carries a game over the last 2 years, and he's still running behind one of the best offensive lines in all of football. If there's any knock on Ezekiel Elliott, why he's not the overall consensus number one every year that he plays, is that he's not super involved in the passing game. At least he hasn't been until now. Now that Des Bryant's out of town and they don't have a true number one wide receiver, they have a good wide receiver group. They're decent. They're not going to go out there and set the world on fire and set all kinds of receiving records by any means. So does Zeke get a little bit more involved in the passing game this year? Possible. Rod Smith is still there. It's debatable, though, right? We don't know for sure if Zeke is going to all of a sudden become a part of the passing game. He's only averaged 30 receptions a year the past couple years, which is okay, but it's nothing that's going to bump him up in PPR leagues or challenge the Le'Veon Bells or David Johnsons of the world who are out there getting close to 80 receptions. But it's okay. It's not horrible. Defenses are going to probably want to key in on the run a little bit more this year, only because they don't have that true threat on the outside. Now, if any of these receivers on the outside can get it going, that's only going to help Ezekiel Elliott out. Allen Hurns and Michael Gallup and Cole Beasley are decent, like I said before, but if they're going to pull defenders out of the box, I don't know yet. Zeke may be running against a lot of stacked boxes this year, but he may be the most consistent option of all these people we're going to be talking about, and that's just because of the volume. He's going to get the touches. He's going to get a lot of red zone looks, a lot of goal line carries. Zeke Elliott is probably going to lead the league in rushing this year, but he's going to get a ton of carries to get it. Like Ezekiel Elliott, should you take him number one? Next on the list is going to be David Johnson out in Arizona. And David Johnson is special, right? We all kind of got bummed out last year when he hurt his wrist there in the first week and missed the entire season. Could he have come back? Possibly, but the Cardinals were so far out of it, it wasn't going to happen. But he's healthy this year, and I've seen lots of video here on him on minicamps and OTAs, and he looks great, looks in the best shape of his life, looks quick. I mean, it's a wrist injury, so it's nothing he has to worry about with mobility or cutting. The dude is still the same dude who a couple years ago, set the world on fire with 2,100 total yards and 20 touchdowns. And it's the same player. And if anything, he's on a little bit more of an improved team now, which I know sounds a little crazier, but if you look at it, it is. Even though Sam Bradford may be the week one starter, Josh Rosen is turning heads in camp. And there's no doubt that at some point Rosen probably takes over this year, whether it's week one or it's middle of the season. We'll have to wait and find out. But Rosen is an improvement, and I like Josh Rosen. I like him in that offense. With what they're doing with it. That they did draft Christian Kirk, which is going to help, being that he'll probably be in the slot, move Larry back outside. Fitzgerald's going to have another great year, whether if it's his last year, we'll have to wait and see. He says it is, but we'll find out. But, David Johnson's going to get close to 300 touches on the ground and close to 100 targets through the air. He's already came out and said that he set a personal goal for himself for 1,000 rushing yards and 1,000 receiving yards. That's a 2,000 total yard season. That's what Gurley had last year. He ended up number one. Now, the lack of passing weapons in Arizona outside of Kirk and Fitzgerald is kind of going to help David Johnson, right? I mean, he's going to get more opportunities out of the backfield than maybe some of these other guys, just because the Cardinals don't have a whole lot of other options. I mean, their offensive line is okay in Arizona. It's not great by any means, but it's no worse than what he had 2 years ago when he put up over 2,000 yards. And the defense in Arizona is it's not great. It's not bad. But they're going to have to throw all four quarters a lot in Arizona this year just to be able to stay competitive against some of these high-powered offenses that are on their schedule. David Johnson is going to be one of the main pieces of their offense, and he's just a good guy to root for, right? I like David Johnson. I want to see David Johnson do good. David Johnson's the kind of guy that you got on your fantasy team, and you can actually root for him not just because of his fantasy numbers, but because you like to watch him play. But should you draft him number one? Next on the list is going to be Le'Veon Bell. And if you've watched the show for a while, you've known I'm not super high on Le'Veon Bell. Not that I think he's going to have a bad season. I just don't know if he's worthy of the top spot. And it's not anything to do with his performance. It's the whole off-the-field issue with the contract. He doesn't want to show up for minicamps or OTAs. Who knows if he shows up for the preseason? Does he have a slow start to the season? Does he get hurt because he wasn't there working out in the office? I don't know. I mean, he looks like he's in great shape. He's still doing stuff on the side. I just don't want to have to deal with that question mark or that what if come week one, right? You want this guy, whoever you take number one, to know that week one they're coming out of the gates. They're coming out of the gates strong. And I a question about Le'Veon Bell. He's got the lowest touchdown upside of everybody that we've talked about so far. Not that he doesn't score touchdowns, but he's nowhere near the high double digits like the other guys that we've already talked about. He's in an offense full of weapons. I'm talking about a lot of weapons are in Pittsburgh. A lot of mouths to feed. And he's going to get his fair share of touches. I mean, they're going to give Bell a lot of looks this year. It's just he doesn't have that opportunity like a lot of these other guys do inside, the 20-yard line. I mean, they throw the ball a lot more in Pittsburgh than they do running it when it gets close. And Le'Veon Bell it's just that question mark, right? I just can't go and say, yep, he's going to do it again. It's going to be awesome. He's going to have a great year. Go take him. Because I just don't know. I mean, he needs that volume, right? We talked about how Zeke was going to get a lot of volume. Le'Veon Bell needs a lot of volume to put up huge numbers. He's just not that guy that's going to break a ton of huge plays and boost up his fantasy numbers that way. So I don't know if you should take him number one. All right, last guy I'm going to talk about is going to be Antonio Brown. Another reason why I said Le'Veon Bell had competition on his own team, and it's because we're talking about another guy in the Steelers. And then rightfully so. Antonio Brown has put up huge numbers for a long time. I mean, he hasn't had less than 150 targets, 100 catches, and 1,200 yards since 2012. The guy constantly puts up big numbers. Now, the emergence of Juju may eat into those numbers slightly. I can't see them affecting Antonio Brown to the point where he's not one of the top options at the wide receiver position in all of football. Juju takes a slight step forward, but he's not eating into Antonio Brown's, numbers. The one thing that does worry me, though, a little bit about Antonio Brown is he's like 100% tied to Big Ben's health, right? And if anybody ever watches Big Ben, it's like when he shows up to the preseason, he's like 2 cheeseburgers short of an offensive lineman position. And he's not the most mobile anymore, and he's been known to hang on to the football. And if he gets hurt, Antonio Brown's value takes a huge hit, more than somebody like a Le'Veon Bell would take. Bell's volume may actually go up, which may actually be better for him if Big Ben were to get hurt. Not that I want to see anybody get hurt, but it's just how, they're tied together. It's a risk. I mean, now instead of just Brown getting hurt, you got to worry about Big Ben also. If it's a PPR, full PPR league, Antonio Brown is a must-have. But if it's not, should you take him number one? All right, so those are the 5 guys on my list. And probably almost every draft, one of these top 5 guys is going to be taken as the number 1 pick. I mean, unless you play in one of those leagues with some dude doesn't know any better and takes like Greg Zuerlein second or first over, whatever, it could happen. If you're in one of those leagues, I'm sorry. You need to get in a different league. But 99.99% of leagues, one of these guys is going to be taken. Now, who should it be? Yes, that was the question we asked at the beginning is, who would I draft number 1? Who do I think you should draft number 1 overall? Right now, as I sit here at the end of June, before the preseason games start, I don't care about all the, nobody's ever done it before people, right? I'm still taking Todd Gurley number 1 as of right now. Now, as the preseason moves forward and we can see a little bit more of these people, I can see the David Johnsons and the Zeke Elliott's and Le'Veon Bells, and I can see these guys starting to inch closer. But as we sit here right now, at this point in time, I'm taking Todd Gurley number 1. He's the running back on one of the best offenses in football with little to no competition for carries. And if he did it last year, what really changed to make it where it won't happen again this year? That's my take on it. But I want to know what you guys would do. If you have the number 1 pick or you don't have the number 1 pick, hit me up down below. Tell me who you plan on taking or what are you contemplating? What's the decision process in your head that you're going through to pick your number 1 player off the board? Love to hear from you. Really appreciate you guys out there. Make sure you guys are checking out RotoBaller. Like I said, links in the description. Really appreciate you guys. Make sure you guys are liking, commenting, subscribing. And I look forward to hearing from you below. This has been one of those debates that I don't know if there is a wrong answer, but I want to know what you're doing. Really appreciate you guys. Make sure you guys are liking, commenting, subscribing. I'll talk to you later. Thanks.